Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium and vanadium exploration and development today. We will hear from Nikolaos Cacos, President and CEO, and Guillermo Pensado, VP Exploration and Development of Blue Sky Uranium Corporation. During today's webinar, they will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Blue Sky webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Blue Sky corporate presentation. That can be found on the company's website, blueskyuranium.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Blue Sky. So we have Blue Sky presenting today. The company is focused on uranium exploration in Argentina, where it has an advanced project with a resource and robust preliminary economic assessment, as well as exploration targets. The company's ticker is BSK on the TSX Venture Exchange. With that, I now turn it over to Nikolaos and Guillermo to update our audience on the company.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Tim, for that introduction. And welcome everybody to our presentation this afternoon. Like stated, we're talking about Blue Sky and uranium and a very unique grassroots discovery, uranium vanadium discovery in southern Argentina. Now, what makes this discovery stand out and unique amongst, especially when compared vis-a-vis with our peers, is that we've discovered not just a new uranium deposit, but in fact, a new uranium district. This is a grassroots discovery of an enormous uranium district that spans up almost 145 kilometers in length. And what is really unique, and we'll get into that in the presentation, and really exciting about this district is the similarities, the geological similarities with some of those districts, some of those world's largest districts, and those in Kazakhstan, which gives it the potential to rank like those amongst the largest districts in the world with some of the lowest operating costs. So there you have it, a bold statement right from the get-go, and I'm fairly confident that as we go through our presentation, these statements will stand. As Tim stated a little earlier, this is I'd like to bring to your attention our disclaimer. We will be making forward-looking statements, and so I bring this to your attention. But also, by the way, this presentation is available on our website, available for you to download. Just stepping back and looking to, why should I even consider Blue Sky as an investment? Well, that's overall the uranium market. We're in a bull uranium market that's been rising for the last few years. There's analysts are still projecting for this to last some time forward, with a supply deficit being projected because of the new transition into the green energy and carbon-free ways of generating electricity. And another point is, and we'll get into this a little deeper as we move along, is about Argentina and the fact that it has a demand for uranium in country, a domestic demand for that, and no supply. So that is a very unique situation. We'll see how that affects Blue Sky. The project itself, Amarillo Grande is the district, but within that district, we've already identified a single deposit, and this deposit is just under 23 million pounds of uranium and 11.5 million pounds of vanadium, and it's definitely open throughout this entire zone. And that is really what we'll see is the real upside here. This has the potential to host multiple deposits along this entire district, really creating a lot of upside here. And like I said at the outset, This is a uranium district that has a potential to rank amongst the lowest operating costs and with some of the largest, rank amongst the largest uranium districts in the world. Here we have a map of Argentina, and the location of our project is situated in the province of Rio Negro. That's in the center, just south of the center there. The light blue province entitled Rio Negro. The big yellow oblong shape there is the location of the Amarillo Grande uranium vanadium district. And Blue Sky controls the entire zone. We have over 300,000 hectares of property that make up that district. The other properties that we have in the southern province of Chubut, we're not doing any work in those for now. We're at the moment completely 100% focused on our Amarillo Grande project. And like any company that I invest in, I always ask, who's the group behind it, who's the main management. And Blue Sky is a member of the Grosser Group, managed by Grosser Group Management. For those who may not be aware, Grosser Group is a pioneer in Argentina. They've been active in that country since back in early 1993, and we've had a lot of success with other companies that we've managed in Argentina, having made 4 major discoveries, including the currently still producing Guacamayo gold mine, the Navidad silver lead deposit, which is the largest undeveloped silver deposit in the world, and this, I believe, is beginning to move forward towards development. And the now producing Chinchilla silver lead zinc mine, which we did in partnership back with SSR Mining from discovery all the way up into production. And of course, the Amarillo Grande uranium vanadium. That's the project that we're talking about today. Now, Grosser Group has developed a very strong reputation in Argentina, has been recognized, and its president, Mr. Joe Grosso, he's been he's another well-known person in Argentina, brings to the company a very in-depth number of contacts throughout the industry and governments. He's been inducted into Argentina's Mining Hall of Fame, been awarded Mining Man of the Year. So he brings a big reputation to the company. And Guillermo, who's on the line here, who'll be speaking shortly. Guillermo is Argentinian, lives in Mendoza. He's a geologist with upwards of 25 years of experience and with a very extensive experience in uranium, in fact, having worked with Cameco and so forth. So we have a very talented team here that's assisting in moving this project forward in a very professional way. Just a few brief words here on just the overall uranium market. Like I said at the outset, since the last 4 or 5 years, uranium has been in an upward trend. The uranium price, rather, has been in an upward trend, and that's due to increasing demand for uranium as we see nuclear power plants around the world being built, and many of them also that are having their lifespan extended. And this is really what's driving this is the transition to carbon-free energy, because you could have either generating carbon-free energy. There's wind and there's solar, but if you want to have a safe, secure, and reliable baseload energy, there's no other right now way of generating that type of electricity without nuclear. So that really is an accepting force, and we're seeing the demand continue to grow. The supply is not that easy to generate. So this, of course, as I can remember from my economics 101 courses, when demand exceeds supply, the price goes up, and that's exactly what we're seeing. And we're expecting over the next few years for this gap to continue to grow and the price of uranium to continue to rise. Where does all the world's uranium come from? Well, most of it is produced, as you can see in this pie chart, from Kazakhstan. About half of the world's uranium comes from there. And that's significant because, as we'll see, a key factor there is not just the number of resources that are there, but the resources that are there are amenable to very low-cost production. And this is a real key. And we'll see how this ties in very nicely with the deposit that we currently have. So missing on this chart right now, as you'll note, is Argentina, and we hope to be the ones to be the first to add it on in there at some point. The pricing for uranium is not traded on an exchange. It's a really an arrangement between a uranium mine and a nuclear power plant, and they write up a contract. Usually these are long-term contracts going up to 15 years, and usually again at a premium to spot price, and that's to ensure that there's a steady flow of uranium to these nuclear power plants. So what we see in the spot market is not necessarily what the real price that a uranium mine will usually receive for selling its uranium. And like I said at the outset, many of our investors that I speak to anyways don't realize that Argentina is a nuclear country. Argentina has got a very long history in the nuclear business. And it's actually really quite well developed since back in the 1950s, well, almost as long as the United States has been in nuclear power. Argentina has got, besides having nuclear power plants and research reactors, they have pilot enrichment plants. They can enrich their own fuel, and are exporters of different types of nuclear technologies, and quite well have a very good reputation globally. The only matter that Argentina doesn't have is production of uranium. So at the moment, Argentina imports all the uranium needs, and this is what presents a very unique business case for Blue Sky, in that our Ivana uranium deposit, even at this early stage, is the largest and most advanced deposit in Argentina. And potentially, we could be moving towards becoming Argentina's first domestic supplier for uranium. And with that, to talk about our Amarillo Grande project, I'll turn it over to Guillermo. Guillermo?
Okay, thank you, Nicolas. Thanks, everyone. And I will try to show you why Nico is mentioning this project as unique opportunity. And this is because it's not only one project with one discovery, as we already did. It's an entire district that it was recognized by the company many years ago, and the development is just at the beginning of the entire district. As you can see the history of this district, that this was discovered back in 2006 by the group well to the north in Santa Barbara sector, where it was found uranium mineralization just on surface. This is talking about the potentiality of Argentina in the uranium sector. And that discovery led to launch an initial exploration program where it was found a neat anomaly a few kilometers to the south. But we continue with more prospecting, airborne radiometric surveys, and we found that uranium was all anomalous along surface for a more than 140 kilometers trend, until we found one well to the south of this district, the Ivana sector. Many years later, while we were continuing prospecting and delineating different targets, we understood that all these uranium in surface could be related to something not recognized yet in depth, and this is when we found finally the Ivana deposit in 2017, and we rapidly moved into initial resource estimate and a PEA because at that moment the uranium price was about $20 per pound, so it was a challenging time for the uranium sector. So we had to prove that this district could make containing deposit that could be potentially economic in volume first, but later if this uranium could be recuperated at lower cost. And this is why we rapidly move into a PEA a few years later, the initial discovery. The project is located in the Rio Negro province, certainly the stronger nuclear jurisdiction in Argentina. And this is very important from the strategic point of view to be doing exploration mining for uranium. But also it's important because this is a province where oil and gas have been produced for the last decades. So they have very good experience and they are open to mining and oil and gas sectors. There are other companies exploring in this district. And in the particular sector we are prospecting and exploring is a big depression in the middle of the province. It's a desert area with very low density of population, and where you can work year-round. So it's a very good place to be exploring uranium. As I mentioned before, the mineralization was initially related or found as superficial type deposits. So this yellow mineral that you see in the upper picture is a vanadium uranium mineral named carnotite. And this is what you usually find on surface along 140 kilometers. This is similar to those districts in Namibia or Western Australia. But what we found later with deeper holes, but NOAA's did, because they were no deeper than 30, 35 meters in depth, we found a sandstone-type deposit, which was the main deposit that was yielding all that uranium in surface due to remobilization. And those kind of districts are bigger and more significant from the geological point of view, and if you see from where the uranium is being produced annually, and you can see that example of this type of mineralization with similarities from the geological point of view are those in Colorado or those in Kazakhstan. The good point here is that we are actually focusing our exploration in the first 25, 50 meters in depth. So that means that we are exploring at very low cost per meter, but although in a potential future production means that because the mineralization is related to poor or unconsolidated sediments, you wouldn't need drilling, blasting, or crushing. So that means potentially lower operating costs. So as just mentioned, the geology is similar or have many similarities to the Kazakhstan districts in where you can see in the left picture there, although small yellow stars represent actually producing mines. In this huge district also, hundreds of kilometers big, where, for example, the biggest mine there is the Inca mine with more than 200 million pounds of uranium, with similar grades of those or uranium content of those at Ivana deposit, which is in the left map, just for comparison. Ivana deposit is the small yellow deposit signed in the southern sector, but still we understand that we have many other targets recognized that along the initial 10 years of prospecting, where we could find potentially more deposits like Ivana. So once we define it that we have done a discovery, our first goal, as mentioned, it was to find if the volume that we had was potentially a minimum economic volume to become a potential future mine, and this was achieved very well. That deposit contained almost 23 million pounds uranium, but also vanadium that can be recuperated. And this mineralization is related to oxidized minerals in the first 25 meters from surface. This is a map on plan of the deposit. It's almost 5 kilometers long corridor mineralized, where the higher grade and most of the resources are related to the central part, the dark zone there, where is most of the deposit. And this deposit was drilled last year, trying to expand with good results to the west. And although we were drilling in the areas with lower drilling coverage, so all that drilling was done for preparing a new resource estimation, which is actually in process, almost finished. Once we got this volume that we understood could be potentially economic, we had to prove that that mineralization could be recuperated from the rock. And because the mineralization is related with oxidized minerals, and in an unconsolidated mineral or poor consolidated, you can recuperate the mineralization for a first stage simple wet scrubbing and screening. So that means you separate the coarse material of the sand or gravel from the mineralization. That generate as a result a reduction in volume to almost a quarter of the initial volume, and you increase your grade or your uranium content almost 4 times. With that pre-concentrated material, you could go into a second stage, which is an alkaline leaching processing plant, which is lower from the lower environmental impact technology and very well-known technology. That means lower cost, finally. Giving an overall processing recovery of 85% for uranium and 53% for vanadium. Once we got this result, we had to prove how could we mine it. And because, as I mentioned many times, the mineralization is from surface down to 25, 30 meters in depth, related to poor consolidated or unconsolidated sediments. So when the mine engineer delineated a type of mine required, this is finally a type of gravel or sand quarry where you don't need drilling, blasting, neither crushing for processing, and where you can be mining in phases and doing your reclamation at the same time back filling your pits. So once we got all those numbers, we went to run this preliminary economic assessment that Nico is going to summarize for you.
Thank you, Guillermo. So we did a PEA even at that early stage, and the reasoning behind that was back in 2019, price of uranium was much lower. It was around $20 a pound, the spot price. So we wanted, like Guillermo outlined, we wanted to be sure that as we continue to raise and invest additional funds to further the exploration efforts for this project, that there was a viability here, that there was a good reason to go forward. So we did this keeping in mind and really focusing on 2 metrics. Number one, we really wanted to focus on, what the capital cost, like what would it cost to put a deposit like Ivana into production. And what we came up with was $100 million plus a $28 million contingency. Now, the reason that we put a focus on that metric was because we were aware that, sure, we've got the Ivana deposit, but then within a 30 kilometer or so radius, there was potential for making additional deposits. And if whatever other deposits that we would find there, the idea was that we would have a centralized plant with a fixed cost, which is the numbers that we're showing here, relatively fixed cost. And then we would have an idea what that, would cost to put all of that into production as a hub and spoke type of operation. And of course, the second metric that we really honed in on was what does it cost to actually pull out a single pound of uranium out of the ground? And our cash cost came in at just over $16 a pound. And if you include the all-in sustaining cost, it's just over $18 a pound. So, these were fantastic numbers as we look back, even in a $20 price environment, potentially this could be a money-making enterprise. So what we did is just to further illustrate and drive home this point is we took these numbers from the PEA and we plotted them against other producing mines around the world. And we wanted to see that, Ivana there, shown in the red line with numbers used from the PEA, had it been in production, would rank, when we compare on a global basis here, within the first quartile of the lowest cost producers in the world. Now, this is a great place to be when you're early on in exploration. So gives you a lot of incentive to keep going forward here. And it was just an interesting side thing to note is all the producing mines that flank either to the left and to the right of that bar, they're all based in Kazakhstan. So we're in good company there. So a very, very competitive deposit. Of course, the natural question at this point is, can we find more uranium in the surrounding district? And that's exactly the stage at which Blue Sky is at right now. So if we look at the overall land holdings of the Amarillo Grande project, stepping back, and what we've done is, after years of owning this property and doing a lot of surface prospecting, we've been able to identify many, many targets. Like I said, we're really looking at focusing on the targets in the surrounding area. Those are close to the Ivana deposit. In this case, targets 1 all the way through 5. And we'll see that on 1, we've launched exploration programs and drill programs to go ahead and to find additional uranium. Target number 1, which is the Ivana deposit itself, like Guillermo already mentioned, we launched the program last year. We've published these results, and it had a twofold objective. One was to go into the existing deposit and see if we could tighten up the drilling so we can upgrade the resource, and that study, by the way, is currently underway. And then the second thing, of course, was to step out and see if there's any scope here for expanding the deposit that we had announced. And we got some very good holes stepping out. So this whole recalculation and update, possibly with the new PEA, is currently underway right now. The study coming along, and we expect hopefully to have that completed in the next couple of months or so. And then, of course, looking at the other targets that are in the surrounding area, we've launched a drill program. And right now, I think we're about to resume drilling on the Ivana East and the Cateo Cuatro. And these are the results, I think, that if we come back with some positive holes, these are going to be the real game changers for Blue Sky. This is what's going to add some significant value because, whatever new deposits we find here, we already understand that the fixed costs of a production plant are relatively fixed. So, this then would all go together, and the next stage is after we complete this exploration program, we'll be to move on to a pre-feasibility study which lasts about 10 years or so, not 10 years, 10 months, sorry. And at the end of which we would be making a production decision. And that brings to a close our formal presentation here on Blue Sky. We've seen that this is a project with immense potential, ability to potentially produce at a very low cost in an excellent environment in Argentina. That's a country that's familiar with nuclear, that's a nuclear jurisdiction, familiar with uranium, and which makes permitting going forward into production very, very easy and forthcoming. And the potential here is to explore and drill out this entire district and potentially turn it into one of the largest districts in the world with some of the world's lowest operating costs.
Great. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for a very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. And we already do have a few questions. You did just touch on kind of the upcoming plans and timelines, but just to reiterate, there's a question here. Any near-term plans to update or upgrade the 2019 PEA to reflect kind of current costs and exchange rates and things?
Yes, there is. And I'll let Guillermo, who's working on it, so you can get it straight from him, talk about this. Oh. You're on mute, Guillermo.
Guillermo, yep.
Sorry for that. Sorry, I didn't pay attention. Yes, we are working in the different parameters that represent the preliminary economic assessment in the beginning. We launched the test work that we are almost finishing, as well as the resource estimation, and we are expecting to present those updates in the next few months, probably.
Okay, great. And we have a couple of questions that are kind of related here. Maybe I'll kind of combine them, but basically looking forward at potentially the timeline to the start of production. And there's one question here that's, is there a date certain when Argentina's current uranium suppliers contracts end? And is it possible for Blue Sky to be a development ready by then?
Well, I guess I take that one
I'm
also.
sure.
Well, Argentina just signed it and published a few months ago a new contract, but in general, what we know from the public is that they are short contracts. They don't have long-term contracts. Uh, but one of the things that Nico mentioned before is in Argentina by law, Argentine nuclear reactors should be consuming Argentine uranium if produced. So in the case that you start production, they should be buying uranium from Argentinian mines, but the law also mentioned at international market conditions. So there are not special prices related to local consumers, but we should be feeding. And the estimated production from the PEA was that we could be producing almost double of the annual consumption of Argentina. So this project, as delineated at that PEA, could be covering the local requirement, but also potentially exporting.
Great. One question here: are there other uranium companies working in Argentina?
Well,
No.
I guess I continue. We have been working almost alone for the last few years. Now, probably the last year is another company, a Canadian company, Consolidated Uranium, being established. There are other projects that they were explored in the past by private sector, and some of them are in standby since the last crisis in the uranium price. But also you need to know that the federal government, they have their own uranium company or nuclear company, and they continuously advance with prospecting and exploration.
Great. We have a couple of questions here that are kind of circling back to Argentina's uranium needs, but do you know how many nuclear reactors does Argentina have, and how much uranium does Argentina need per year?
Nico or me? Okay, we have three nuclear reactors working today, and we have other being not in construction. Well, there is a small modular reactor in construction today, and being prepared another big nuclear reactor, potentially to be constructed by China, and the annual consumption today is about 250 tons of uranium.
Okay, great. One question here, kind of clarification, I guess, but are there any royalties on the project?
No, all the properties are 100% controlled by Blue Sky. Remember that this district was discovered by the company many years ago, and we have been establishing properties along the exploration, and we maintain those properties because we understand that many of them have the potentiality to represent potential future exploration zones where more or multiple deposits could be defined along this significant corridor that is 145 kilometers long by 30 kilometers wide. So it's a huge area that now we are focusing our exploration in the southern portion, but we have a geological potential all along the district. As I mentioned, 100% controlled by the company and no royalties related.
Yeah. These are state claims.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. One question here on the environmental side. Are there concerns about dust, tailings, or wastewater, et cetera? Any risks here with permitting?
No. Guillermo?
Okay, me again. Look, I've been exploring uranium for many years, and really the location of this district is particular and very good from the environmental point of view, because it's a big depression, topographic depression in the middle of this province, which is a desert. So if you don't have very low rains, that helps in general to reduce your risk with water moving. But because we are in a depression, we are below any aquifer related to any community or cities surrounding this district. So we are not competitors of fresh water with anybody, because in fact, the water in the Ivana deposit is nasty water. It's salty water that even animals can drink that water, but we can use in the process. So we are not competitors in water. The dust is something that you usually control with water, because we have water, although we are a desert, we have water at 10, 15 meters in depth, this salty, nasty water. So you can use from the industry. This is from the environmental and still the social point of view. We are 30 kilometers north of Valcheta community, which is a really mining-friendly community. They have been working with mining since decades, not metalliferous mining, or in the history they have some, but they have other clay mining and many other things. And we have many of our workers from that community, and we have very good relationships. So from the social and environmental point of view, we are very well positioned in that project.
Great. Question here: is there any activity going on the ground on the project today?
Yes, we launched the drilling program a few months ago that we presented a press release. Due to some technical and drilling problems, we have to delay that program for a while, but probably resuming this month. Meanwhile, we continue delineating new targets. And this is the funny thing here. It's so big, the district, that you always have more areas to define. And we are working in superficial prospecting, mapping, sampling, auger drilling, pit sampling, now delineating potentially more geophysical works, trying to delineate new target that could be in the future become new drilling targets.
And kind of a follow-up question here, but how many additional drill holes would be required for a future study?
Well, if we think that, depend on what. Remember that we have two different things. We have the deposit itself, that next step probably is we are trying to achieve now indicated resources. Something that we understood before previous PEA or the last PEA, that we had enough drilling pattern to move or upgrade those resources into indicated, something that we need to prove with the new resource estimation actually in process, as I mentioned. So if we want to move this into PFS, probably we need to advance with more infill drilling in the deposit, just to go into measure resources. So that part but you need to understand, but at this point we have 800, almost 50 holes, but in meters, they only represent about 11,000 meters, because the average depth is 13 meters. So, and this is what is spectacular for this project. From the exploration point of view, it's very cheap, because, in a day, you can drill several holes and advance very rapidly along the project. And you have, between 5 and 25 meters in there hole. So that depends on the depth where you are. You can drill 3, 4, up to 6 holes in a day, one shift. So that is very rapidly. The other thing is the exploration. That is what we are doing today, trying to define another Ivana-type deposit in the surrounding area. This trying to generate a cluster of deposit that could be potentially feeding a central facility. And those, we are trying to maintain our exploration in average in 50 meters in depth holes, exploring. trying to maintain the same type of deposit model with lower or very low operating costs for mining and processing, and trying to maintain the exploration costs, also reduce it, because we understand that we have the potential to do it. But we are still not going in depth because we still have potential deeper in the system, but that's represent higher costs and higher risk. So it's something that at this point of the knowledge of this district, something that we are trying to maintain, trying to focus in the superficial or near surface potential.
Great. One question that came in kind of circling back, you said you had some technical difficulties with the drilling that kind of caused a temporary delay. Is there any more information you can give us on specifics on that?
Well, I guess it's confidential. You know, we have not presented any press release, but one of the things that is happening, I will talk about in general in Argentina, the intensive drilling in the lithium sector in Argentina, in the north of Argentina, is absorbing the entire efforts in drilling. All the companies are drilling there, so it's very challenging to be drilling today in Argentina. Now in winter is when we could find another available rig, but this is something that is happening due to the enormous interest in the northern portion of the country, actually under drilling.
Okay. There's a few questions that are kind of related here, but obviously just recently completed a capital raise. How do you plan to spend that money from that capital raise? And another question here that was just kind of general financial details. How much cash do you have on hand, and what is the exploration budget?
Well, we just completed last month $1.5 million capital raise, so we got just a little more than that. And the purpose of that was to have enough funds on hand to complete the contemplated drill programs that we have announced, and a update in a resource and or PEA calculation. So these are two significant milestones that we feel would add significant value to the company and sort of hopefully re-rate the company's valuation. So going forward from there, in terms of arranging for pre-feasibility study and any funding that we would need for that, we would be doing it from a stronger financial position.
Okay. And we did have one question kind of following up there, but how much more capital would be needed to complete the PFS?
Estimates range between $10 and $15 million.
Okay. And circling back on the PEA, updated PEA, will that be finalized by the end of 2023?
Well, I don't want to pressure Guillermo. I'll also
we hope so. Yeah, we hope so to do it. I mean, that is something that we are always. There are always a question that we are trying to realize how important is this new PEA, the result that we are getting in between, and how to move forward. And our goal is to have those results or a decision by the end of the year. Yes.
Okay, great. And maybe one general question here. Obviously, operating in Argentina, and you have a fair amount of experience there. Have you been impacted by anything politically or with the relatively high inflation rate in the country?
No, it hasn't had any material impact on us. It gives our accounting team some headaches, and that they have to constantly adjust our workers, salaries and wages and whatnot. But our funds are kept outside of Argentina. It's in dollars, so if inflation eats away at the value of the peso in terms of dollars, in some cases can actually be positive for us and for some contracts and whatnot. But Nonetheless, though, I think Argentina, the key is that Argentina has got a couple of key things really going for it. Like I think Guillermo touched on that, is that it's very much so become a mining country. It's 30 years ago when we entered Argentina. It was not a mining country. It was more primarily an agricultural country, and mining was almost a foreign word there. But since then, you've got this, they very quickly, the Argentines and the governments, all governments, might I add, of all stripes that have changed holding power since 30 years ago, have recognized that the potential for mining in Argentina can rival and exceed and become even more larger than that of Chile's, and it could represent very significant revenues for the government. And we're seeing this right now play out with the lithium industry up in northern Argentina as that develops. The royalties that come back to the governments are very positive. The contributions to develop the local development in the provinces and the municipalities that are involved, and to the people down there, has been very, very positive. And that's seen as a real lesson, and like to use Guillermo's word, a maturation of the industry. So we're looking to see that, trickle down throughout the rest of the mining industry. And second of all, from a geopolitical security point of view, Argentina is in a very friendly space. One thing to have a uranium mine and be sourcing uranium, from Kazakhstan, and another thing to be sourcing it from Argentina. So that's having a very positive impact on our location right now.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we had. But I suppose just to review, we did go over a few questions about timeline, but just to reiterate here, what news might we expect, and what are upcoming milestones for the company in the coming months?
Yeah, I think we're at a really good point right now where I think milestones we've got upcoming right now. Number one, drill results as we get back and we resume drilling some of our more prospective targets right now over the coming months. I think the potential for making new discovery, a new Ivana, so to speak, is quite hopeful. So that could be a very significant event that's going to happen between now and the end of the year. And the second point is that we just talked about is updating a new PEA and a new resource. I think that's also very exciting as well. So these are the two key things over the next couple of quarters here that are going to be potentially really value adding for the company and turning points.
Great. Well, I'd like to thank Nikolaos Cacos and Guillermo Pensado for presenting today. And thank you everyone on the line for tuning in. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back next Thursday afternoon when our webinar series continues with Strathmore Plus Uranium presenting Thursday, August 17th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.